こんにちは。私はアンドリューです。これは日本語のレッスン1です。Hi everyone, this is Andrew. This is my very first Japanese lesson. It'll just be an introduction to the language as well as an introduction about myself. So back in 2001 to 2006, I was living and working in Japan. I had plenty of free time, so I studied a lot of Japanese, not only in my free time, but at formal classes, both at night time and on the weekend. I learned a lot. I probably got to approximately an intermediate level, I would say. However, since then, I haven't had much opportunity to speak Japanese because I don't really know that many Japanese people. My wife is Chinese, so I speak plenty of Mandarin at home, as do my children. But yeah, Japanese is probably a bit lacking. So that's what this series is for. Hopefully, not only will you, the viewer, gain something from this, but so will I, hopefully. Okay. First of all, what is Japanese? Well, let's write Japanese in Japanese. Nihongo. Now, I'm going to write it in a couple of different scripts. I'll tell you about them soon. Hongo. Nihongo. Okay. So this top one, that's how Japanese people would write it ordinarily. That type of script is called kanji. You've probably heard of the word kanji. Kanji literally just means Chinese characters. So they're characters that have originally come from China. Now they're considered, I believe the term's ideogram or ideograph. That is, they have meaning as well as a pronunciation. Now the pronunciation isn't fixed. So for example, this symbol here, which in this case is pronounced ni, can also be pronounced other ways like hi and nichi. So there's going to be a number of different readings. So by far the hardest part about Japanese is the kanji. So ni, in this case, just means sun. The next character, hon, I think it means origin. It can be used to mean book. So if you say I'm reading a book, you use the word hon in that case. But I think in this case it means origin. And the final character, go, just means language. So to translate that literally would be the origin of the sun language, or Japanese as we like to call it. Okay, the next script, the next line is Hiragana. Hiragana. Now, I'll write that first. Hiragana. Hiragana is basically the Japanese equivalent of an alphabet, although technically it's not an alphabet. I think it's described as a syllabary, meaning that each character represents one sound. So ni is always pronounced ni. You're not going to get another alternate pronunciation of that. Ni is ni. Ho is ho. N is n. And go is go. Now, each one of these must take the same amount of time to say. So, although hon, so this hon here is a single character, a single kanji, it's actually two sort of syllables long. So it's more like nihongo. Nihongo. So it must be nihongo, nihongo, nihongo. So before, when you heard me say konnichiwa, there's actually an n in konnichiwa. So it's not konnichiwa, it's konnichiwa. We'll talk about that later. But yes, the key is that every single hiragana must be pronounced, unlike English, which I'll have a look at some examples of English soon. Now the next script here, it's not really a Japanese script, but it is used. It's called ro ma ji, which maybe you could hazard a guess that that means Roman script, because that's where it's come from. Ro ma ji, Roman script, or English to you and me. It's not that... Japanese people wouldn't naturally want to use that. It's not native to them. They'd much prefer these two up here. But Romaji is actually very useful, especially with modern devices such as computers and tablets and so on. Because when you go to enter, like when I'm going to enter this kanji up here, I would literally type in N-I-H-O-N-G-O. And then that option would come, this option here would come to, and I could just select it. So it's good to know Romaji, but after you've studied Hiragana and another script called Katakana, once you know those, you'll probably never need to worry about Romaji again. So let's do the final script. So there's technically 3 scripts in Japanese: Kanji, Hiragana, and Katakana. Now, katakana is used primarily for words from a foreign source. So, for example, my name in Japanese, so Andrew in Japanese, is Andoryu. So I'll just write that for you. Andoryu. It's very, very similar. It's very similar to hiragana. They're kind of they've got exactly the same sounds. They're very similar. The alphabets are identical, except that the symbols are different. Katakana can also be used for other things, but we'll get into more detail about that in another lesson, I think. So the key is that there's 3 main scripts. There's kanji. Let me just choose a different color here. Oops. So there's kanji, there's hiragana, and there's katakana. Right. So let's just take a quick look at English pronunciation. So this is the hard thing about English, but the easy thing about Japanese. So bear with me with this example. So look at this word here. How about this English word? And we'll focus on the letter A, right? The letter A. So in this case, A is pronounced A, isn't it? A, so almost a AY sound. How about in this word? Cat. Cat. Okay, so that's not pronounced A, is it? It's pronounced at, cat. Now what if we add an R to that word? Cart. Cart. So the R changes the A sound completely, doesn't it? So we got cat and then cart. Now, what about this word? What about the A in that word? Well, it's almost not pronounced, is it? Bead. Bead. And if we pop an R into that word, bread. So, as you can see in English, there's all different ways we can pronounce this A, and it's not simplistic. So somebody who's learning English for the first time, if they're told that A is pronounced this way, well, my goodness, they're going to be in for a bit of a shock, because it keeps changing. However, in Japanese, here's a hiragana a, here's a hiragana a, here's a katakana a. That is always pronounced a. And that's what makes Japanese, I think, relatively simple. Once you know your hiragana and katakana, you will not have problems with pronunciation again. And so I recommend the first thing you do is learn Hiragana, followed closely by Katakana. And I'll do 2 more lessons on those 2 scripts. Kanji is the hard part of Japanese. Kanji can be a nightmare. But if you learn through it slowly, as the children over there would, so they'd probably, like in their first grade, at like primary school, they might learn about 100 kanji. You could do the same too. And they're all kind of pictographs, so like they kind of look like the thing they are. So here's a kanji. What do you think that might mean? It looks similar to hon, as in Nihongo. Well, this is ki. This is ki. It means tree. Kind of looks like a tree, doesn't it? And, for example, here's another kanji. It's pronounced kuchi. Kuchi. And it means mouth. It kind of looks like a mouth, doesn't it? Or opening, for example, an exit would use that in its name, in the word. Kuchi. So although there's lots of them, once you start to get used to them, it actually makes a lot of sense when they use them. Of course, there's exceptions. Another easy thing about Japanese is that the grammar is relatively straightforward. So, although it's different from English, it's very well structured. And once you know the grammar, it's pretty well consistent. There's not that many inconsistencies in Japanese. Yeah, you might get the occasional, like the different dialects from the different parts of Japan. But if you learn standard Japanese, you're well on your way to being able to communicate with everybody in Japan. Actually, you will be able to communicate with everybody in Japan. Except people who can't speak Japanese, of course, like foreign nationals or whatever. So I think that'll do for Japanese, the Japanese introduction. Next up, I'll make a lesson on Hiragana, and then after that, one on Katakana. Okay, cheers.